Hey everybody, I'm Scott Cuthbert, co-founder, CEO of Safeopedia,
And I'm Gabe Encarnacion with BBL Safety.
and we have a fascinating episode coming up for you on change management, bringing new technologies, new initiatives into your organization. So we have a couple of special guests. First one I'll introduce is Dr. Tristan Casey, and he's title is Implementation Scientist, specializing in workplace health and safety and well-being. And Tristan has more degrees than I can list off in the introduction. So we'll include his LinkedIn profile so people can go check out his background. But like I say, he's got more degrees on organizational psychology, environmental health and safety. So definitely more than qualified to help us on this conversation today.
Yeah, and our second guest, actually, Scott, I think this is our first episode where we've got two guests at the same time.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, there are a couple firsts on this one, but let's start with Heather Chapman is our second guest, and she's a safety consultant based here in the U.S. and has about I believe she said almost a little over 20 years of experience in health and safety, and specifically with working with organizations to get new technology implemented. And again, just like a lot of the other discussions we've had about new tech, Tristan and Heather really do bring that technical and technological expertise into the discussion, but it's really neat to see how the people aspect and some of the soft skills become part of the discussion around technology. So great discussion, and yeah, hope you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Heather Chapman. I am a fellow glutton for punishment in the safety world. I have worked in the safety field from plant safety, corporate safety, the research side, and academia to starting my own consultant company. I've been doing this for about 23 years, and this podcast, this topic is near and dear to me. I very much feel that employee engagement and buy-in is just crucial to the overall success of a safety program.
Yeah, I like the glutton for punishment.
And I doubled down by starting my own consulting company. So
yeah, it's not just enough to do safety for another company. You just want to take on all of them.
Yes,
all of it. Yes, do it for everyone. Yeah. Wow, my goodness.
I do love it though.
That's awesome.
That's great. And Tristan?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I have a very similar background to Heather in that I've done a few different things, including the industry angle, the government angle, the consulting angle, academia as well. So it's a very rich melting pot of different perspectives that hopefully we can both bring today. I've got an organizational psychology background, and I've always been fascinated by technology and the fusion with people. So I think that's why I got attracted to safety, because it is such a, once you peel back the layers, it becomes quite technical. A lot of theory, a lot of very specialized knowledge. But then you've also got the people component, which is about making that knowledge practical and implementable in an organization. So I really love that fusion of two worlds coming together.
And I appreciate the introductions, and I will encourage people to reach out, connect with Heather and Tristan on LinkedIn, and we'll share those links in the bottom. But I think, Gabe, we should take note. I think we've got more degrees on this podcast than all of the previous podcasts combined, and that's no thanks to us at all. That's
yeah, I was about to mention I am an MBA dropout, so that's I'm definitely not contributing to this the knowledge pool here, so or the degree pool, so I get that.
Yeah
And 3 countries represented today, which is a first for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got the US and Canada and Australia. So
yeah,
good times.
Tristan's going to share with us what's going to happen tomorrow, because he already knows. So
yeah, so it does make me feel better that I know that there is a tomorrow. So that's awesome. Tristan's there. If the screen goes blank, then I'm like, oh, we got some problems.
Yeah, great. Well, and the topic today, like we kind of mentioned in the preamble is that, we've heard from safety professionals, almost when we do surveys after our webinars or when we get together at Safety Connect, we always hear about the struggle they have getting that executive buy-in or that management buy-in or even employee kind of engagement when they want to bring in, new technology or new program or new initiative. So we really wanted to kind of dig into kind of I think safety professionals have a lot of technical training, but not necessarily that organizational psychology. Tristan and Heather both have backgrounds in, so wanted to kind of peel back the layers a little bit and try to dig into those change management issues, those organizational psychology issues that you might not be aware of, that you should be thinking about as you're introducing a new program or even the idea of a new program. So Tristan, I don't know if you wanted to kick it off, but talking about why technology, in particular, there's challenges, in introducing that concept or that idea to an organization.
Yeah, certainly, Scott. So safety is a bit of a funny thing. It adds a bit of a moderating factor, or sort of changes the context of different things that we're doing in organizations. So an example is safety training is a bit different to corporate training. There's a whole host of reasons why we have to do safety training a little bit differently. And that's kind of the inspiration for today. I think for technology, there's a few reasons why we have to think differently about safety-specific technology as compared to regular tech. So I'd say that there's sometimes, unfortunately, can be some difficult or challenging situations when people may use the technology to maybe report an incident, if that's what the technology is there to do. It could result in disciplinary action, and so that kind of sends a signal to the rest of the employees: hey, don't use that tech, because if you do it, something adverse will happen to you. So there's like a cultural element that wraps around the technology. What happens when people use it? Is there an expectation that everything will be actioned? How does it tie into their sort of organizational justice and incident investigation processes? The other thing about technology, I think, with safety is that there's a temptation to just automate or basically take a paper process and turn it into an electronic process. And that just perpetuates sort of bureaucracy and inefficiency in the organization. It just makes it digital now. So we're sort of accelerating the growth of that administrative burden. So that can create a little bit of cynicism and lack of use as well. I think a really interesting, and this is probably the final point, and I might invite Heather to contribute some of her ideas, but is the potential ethical quagmire or challenge that might come from implementing different types of safety technologies. So safety is inherently an ethical, moral kind of thing. If we take things away, if we change things, it runs the risk of people saying, hey, you're taking away something that's protecting workers' safety. And I think when we have safety technology, we can sometimes forget that, well, what about the surveillance aspects of that? Or does it create some job insecurity for people because they feel like their jobs may be under threat or more scrutiny on their roles? So it gets deep pretty quickly. And I think there's lots to unpack there today.
Yeah, and I would tie right into that. When we start looking at implementing technology, from the employee perspective, a lot of their first thoughts are, am I going to be penalized if I do something wrong or I don't improve? Is the data from this technology going to somehow get me in trouble? So helping people understand what this technology is for and why we're using it and what it will and won't do is actually critical for even being able to try to implement something like this. If whatever the technology is, if it's seen as an additional task that I need to do, it's one more thing that I need to do, chances are it's not going to be sustainable. So finding a way to design technology into existing systems would be a key factor in making sure it's successful in the long run. And then I think the final thing is let's, just in the case of technology, let's say we're talking about something related to ergonomics. I take a video and there's all sorts of numbers and stats and, Rula numbers and Reba numbers that come out of that. What does that mean to an employee? Probably they don't know what it means. There's a good chance they don't care what it means. So I think finding a way to take whatever learnings or data or outputs you get from this technology and making it visual and applicable to the employees it's just crucial to making sure that it succeeds and that people will adopt.
I agree with that. I think that there were a couple points that you both brought up, which I thought was interesting. One of which was that there's a distinction between technology and being technical. I think that in safety, there are a lot of people that can be very technical. I think the field lends itself to having, there are regulations, standards, things that we have to apply to, and that we are tasked with watching, recording, enforcing, reporting, all those kind of things. But the technology it could either help that or detract from it. So if there's a new technological platform, maybe it's an app, maybe it's a program or a system of some sort, if it might actually help the technical aspect, or as you said, Tristan, it might just add to the bureaucracy. It just makes it faster. It's not actually solving the problem. And then Heather, you brought up also, and actually both of you mentioned this too, is that there's this other kind of fuzzy factor in safety, even with safety technology and the technical aspect of safety, that it's about how people respond to it and how do they, whether it's positive or negative, how do they use it? Does it actually take away from their work? It's not as straightforward as the ones and zeros in the code. It's not just here's the input and then here's the expected output, because you have different people that are constantly changing. And it feels like it's more about that change management, not to detract from the tools themselves, but how, regardless of what the tool is or the practice is, it feels like that understanding of people and how they interact with change is absolutely critical for people in the safety field.
Yeah, I'd agree, Gabe. If you look at some of the competency models that are coming out from big organizations like IOSH, that sort of define the landscape of what a safety professional needs to do, very much they've got a blend of technical and now they've got the interpersonal competencies. So there's a growing expectation that safety professionals will be skilled in influencing, change management, all those types of things, the leadership aspects, that sort of supports the implementation of safety, not just sort of forces it on people and says, hey, this is what we're doing, but more bringing them on a journey and facilitating that change. So it's definitely coming, it's here. It's just the training organizations and the universities need to catch up, I think.
So I can't hide behind my clipboard anymore in my checklists?
No, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Yeah, and I think you again, Heather and Tristan, you both touched on it, and I'll call it, the organizational culture, but that obviously, if you're going to get penalized for reporting a near miss or an incident, then you're going to be reluctant to report one. So how does a safety professional or navigate, or at least maybe introduce the idea to the executive team that we need to embrace this new information that's going to come in, and we need to explain to the organization how this will help keep people safe and send them home at the end of the day, versus now we're going to track down who's the reason for the infraction and potentially lose their job or get reprimanded. So how any suggestions on how they could go about having that conversation with the executive team?
Yeah. Heather, do you want to go first, and I can?
Oh, sure. I feel like Tristan, you and I could off-road here for hours on just the whole culture aspect of it. And I think I'll be bold in just saying, if the culture is poor, or it's, reactive, it's immature, it's not ready to embrace these proactive type measures like using technology, it's probably not the right time to even try, because it's an uphill battle the whole time. And so prepping the organization to even adopt a new process or a new technology platform, that could take years in order for it to be thoroughly implemented and sustainable. So how do you get there? Well, we talked about the soft skills or the people skills that are needed for the safety person. You can have all the technical knowledge in the world, but if you can't relate to people and get people to trust you and want to follow you, it's probably not going to implement very well. So I can give an example. When I started my career, I wanted to launch this piece of an early intervention program. And of course, it's going to cost a little bit of money, but my suspicion on the return on investment was pretty substantial. And so I remember asking the vice president of human resources if I could do this program. And her immediate response was, "Are you crazy?" And I thought, well, no. And here's why, and, explain the rationale. And, they wouldn't agree immediately to this larger deal that I wanted to facilitate a partnership with an on-site provider, but they agreed to a pilot. And so the way I started making these incremental changes was small steps. So I got a 90-day pilot approved, and I was able to show in those 90 days the significant ROI, and just not only the ROI, but for me, what was more important, this pilot really got the employees engaged in the process, and then they became a part of the solution. So I think depending on the culture, the timing needs to be right, and you may have to take baby steps.
I agree with that statement too. And what's so funny about how you put that together as well is that that one of the reasons why I'll back up for a second. One of the reasons why Scott and I started talking about doing this podcast was putting together the worlds of safety and business, and it feels like they can be at odds with one another in a lot of ways. But what you did in launching that pilot program, or even finding a way to address that initial reaction of, hey, are you crazy? This is a lot of money. This is even going to work. Is you started putting it in a framework or a context that executive management could understand, whether it was looking at the ROI, whether it's looking at employee engagement or retention. Those are terminologies. It's a world that the executive management can understand. And as you said, like, you found another solution where it wasn't an all or nothing, but maybe we start with a 90-day pilot. And then you start to see the results of that. And then people start to get on board. And then it's like, okay, well, maybe Heather's not actually crazy. And this actually really can work. Again, that's part of that change management of seeing that, hey, there's something completely new. And maybe we take those baby steps to get that change moving. And now people are more on board with further changes going forward.
Yeah. Yep. I'll let Tristan take the floor, and I'm sure you have some comments here as well.
Yeah, thanks. I've got a very specific answer, I guess, in addition to your great points, Heather. So I found some success with executives here in Australia by linking some of these needs to the legislation. So in Australia, we have a very kind of interesting point, which is the due diligence of officers or executives in the company, that they have to basically know what's going on in their business, and they have to know really well the hazards, the risks, what the work is, all that sort of thing, and keep up to date in their own knowledge of health and safety. So it's very specific, and that's linked to penalties if that's not complied with. So there's a clear business need that if that's the hook for them to really care about this. So not to come in with a stick, but to say, look, if you think about safety culture, it is about the quality of information in your organization and how much do you know what's going on at the top of the business. All these disasters, these high profile events, they're precipitated by a poor information environment, that there's just a lack of understanding, there's dismissal of experts, there's like we said, the disciplinary hearings or disciplinary action for people that report. So all these things that kind of look seemingly small and isolated actually accumulate and create the incubation of risk in the organization. So I try and educate executives on that topic and say, well, do you have false assurance? Do you kind of feel you're safe, but you're actually not? And kind of get them feeling a bit uncertain, and create that burning platform that if we have this technology solution, or we have this change management program, this education program, that kind of is the entry point to help address that challenge for the executives. So I think it's the old cliche: if you don't have top management support, then the initiative just won't go anywhere. So I try to get them to care about whatever it is that I'm trying to implement, and that's one little leverage point that I found works quite well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Legislation is constantly changing, and the executives are being held to a higher and higher account, for what happens within their organization. So that's a great way to position it, to get some of that emotional buy-in. And then, like Heather said, if your organization isn't ready, it's probably a wasted effort. So make sure that the organization is ready. You've got your reasons for moving forward with new technology or a new initiative before you get started. I want to just as a quick aside, we spoke with Colleen Madison, who's a sales expert, I'll say, and again, Heather, you kind of touched on it in positioning it, and being able to adapt and be a little fluid with the initial rejection. I think safety people should know that from a sales perspective, a lot of times you don't get that yes until you've asked, 7 or more times, and most people give up after they ask, 2 or 3 times. So stick with it, and don't lose sight of the fact that you might have to bring this up, a number of different times, present different positions and different ideas. But if it's right for your organization, don't just ask once and get rejected and give up. Definitely stay persistent and keep pushing that initiative. The other thing I was going to ask ask about was just what about talking to your peers, right? So Tristan, I think you brought up a good point of looking at the compliance or legislation side of things. Could safety folks say, hey, look, this is what our competition's doing, or this is what other organizations are doing, and maybe through the vendor even getting some referral calls to talk to organizations who have gone through it and can share the war stories, but also the other side of the really intensive implementation.
Yeah, Scott, I as you were talking, it reminded me of a bit of a study that we did during COVID, where we studied safety managers and how they basically started to reach out to their networks and engage in something called job crafting. So job crafting is where an individual will informally modify their job duties and tasks and expand that to include things that might not be part of their original remit. So for a safety professional, we saw them jump into procurement, we saw them jump into the sort of crisis advice and executive support, just really expanding what they do on a daily basis to help the organization get through a tough time. And I think the lesson we learned there is that if you do that, the individual benefits, reduced burnout, more job satisfaction, more meaning in their job, but also the organization will benefit too. So I think if you are a safety professional, engage in this relational, what we call the relational job crafting. Reach out to your networks, ask others how they've gone through this process themselves, and then feed that information back to the workplace. So you're almost, and I think for many safety professionals, that kind of strategic politics and networking and sort of market research is probably not part of their formal job duties. So they'd have to do a little bit of innovation there and think outside the box of what they're supposed to be doing every day, and say, well, this is actually going to add value if I ask others what they've done and get some success factors I can share with my own people.
Yeah, and I think Tristan, to your point, if you as the safety person are trying to sell your idea, doing some market research it's critical. If you want to get executive support, it would only help your case if you go to your executive leadership and say, hey, look, I spoke with the safety person at XYZ company. They went through this. Here's what they did. Here are the results. Investing some time to fully prepare and understand what others have done it's just an important process.
And I'm sure you've seen that too, Heather, in your role as a consultant, where you've actually, I'm guessing you've run into multiple companies who are dealing with the same issue, and maybe they think that they're the only ones that are dealing with that issue, and then you can come in and say, hey, there are actually several others that I've talked with and have worked with that are doing the same thing, and
Yeah.
and there is a lot of benefit with just knowing that other people are dealing with the same thing that you are too.
Yeah, and certainly as a consultant, it just helps me be more efficient in my helping other organizations because I've been there, done that, seen it, know how to go about it. But within an organization, absolutely, it's a time saver. Why recreate the wheel? Let's understand what others have done and learn from their mistakes and their learnings and take it and apply it within our organization.
So how do you take information, let's say from a project that you were working on, or some sort of a technical, some sort of technology that you were helping to implement in an organization, and you take the information that's coming out of it? I'm sure that pretty much any software platform that's being implemented, there are metrics that come out of it. There's data that shows how it's being adopted, the results in it, things like that. How have you taken that information that could be highly technical and made it applicable for the people that are either consuming or creating that data? So Heather, like, how have you seen that when you come to not just executive management, but even the middle management or the line workers, and take information and make it actually important to them?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to this earlier. You get all these technical outputs and it is highly valuable to the safety person. But if I shared the stuff that's valuable to me, it may not, I have to know my audience.
Right.
Your hourly workforce, they're not going to want all the numbers that I want. They're going to want to see something different. The leadership team, they're not going to want to see a 15-page report with all the great stats and numbers that I want to see. They just want to know that executive summary. Right. And so knowing your audience and then tailoring the content to them helps with that buy-in and sustainability. For the hourly workforce, a lot of times I try to make it visual for them. There's all sorts of things happening now with video processing, and you take a video of somebody performing a task and the output is their body parts highlight in red, yellow, green. You can turn that around and show your workforce and they can immediately see, oh, I now understand when I'm doing this task, my back is in high risk. That leaves way more of an impact than me saying, hey, when you're doing that task, your back is bent at 75 degrees and that's not good. If I can show them their body in motion and it highlights in red, that's visual, that's appealing. They will absolutely see that as an eye-opening experience. I can take that same data then and show it to executive leadership and say, hey, now that we see this, I need to get a pallet lift table for that pallet. And then we can reduce this back bend altogether. So yeah, just taking the information and, tailoring it to your audience and making it brief, to the point, and just as visual as possible.
We're proud to announce that this podcast is brought to you by Isometrics, the leader in environmental health and safety solutions for over 25 years. Isometrics' award-winning EH&S software provides you with a comprehensive and integrated risk and compliance management solution. With Isometrics, you can seamlessly integrate EH&S data from across your organization, drive accountability, standardize your EH&S risk management, and gain real-time access to critical EH&S data and insights. If you're looking to transform your business safety and sustainability, visit isometrics.com to get started.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and because I I thought I heard earlier too, just Heather, on the approach you were talking about, and I think Tristan even touched on it as well, but if you can get, it sounds like if you can get some collaboration from the organization on the solution, so it isn't just a prescriptive, here's what we're doing and here's what's, you know, what you're going to have to do, but engaging them in a more collaborative way, to get their buy-in or get their feedback, so that when it is ready to go, they've already bought in. If you could share any insights or experience on getting that collaboration effort going, I'm sure that would be well received.
Yeah, I think Tristan and I both had some points on this, and for me, the lead time to implement technology is easily weeks, if not months. You have to socialize what you're trying to do, how this technology works, and that might mean demoing it out on the floor, giving some live demonstrations, not only to leadership, but to, if there's a union there, and just the hourly workforce. They need to understand why do I need to care about this? What, how is this going to make my life better or my work easier? And so spending a good deal of time just building relationships, socializing the idea, and then hopefully getting people to buy into it. And in order for them to buy in, they really need to understand, what's in it for me? Why do I need to care about this? Tristan, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So I guess an example is where I engaged. We were developing a technology platform which looked at safety, culture, and climate measurement, and or climate measurement, and to really design the dashboards and the data outputs, as exactly what Scott said. We did some focus groups and sessions with workers, with managers, and said, here's our kind of rough concept. What would you add? What would make it more kind of meaningful to you? And really fed that sort of that co-design, I guess, philosophy that we hear a lot about is really effective for those types of things, because the end user, they have to have a seat at the table. It's a safety professional, in all their good intentions, sat down in the office and made this wonderful dashboard, but then took it to the floor and they didn't understand any of it, or it was very hard to explain in simple terms. That would be a wasted effort. So involving people, like you've said, Scott, is so important, and not, I guess, necessarily from only a buy-in or ownership part, but also just really helping to get their needs. Like what are the end users' needs, and how can we incorporate that into the implementation of the technology.
So there were two things that both of you brought up, which I thought were really neat. One was that you're taking information, and a lot of it that is being generated by the technology, by the software platform, whatever it is that's being implemented. And it's not that you are withholding or changing information, you're showing the applicable facets of that information to the correct audiences. So as you had said, Heather, the executive management may just want to see the bullet points in the executive summary. And then the people that are, on the floor, they may want to see a graphical representation of it, so that they can take actionable items very quickly and digest the information very quickly. It feels like that's one of the areas where change management can fail, is if there's all the information and the person who is starting it and putting it together forgets the audience. It'll die really quickly because no one cares. Even though the information is really good, they can't see what's in it for them. And then I believe both of you brought this up as well too, is that the use of that data and the use of the information and showing how it's actually applying to the business and growing the business is very important. And ultimately, it's understanding what are people's motivations in this. And I feel like safety professionals need to understand that, remember that, from the very start, or keep that as an overarching theme, is that you need to remember what people's motivations are, whether they're an hourly line worker or executive management, and then structure the change and the technology to appeal to them all across the board.
Yeah, that's a great summary, Gabe. One thing that I did want to mention today is, and I think it's often implicit, is that there's a real opportunity for safety professionals to partner with technology providers, because the tech providers are really great at building the infrastructure, but often, some of the fields, some of the way the forms flow together, the technology is assembled and works functionally, doesn't always incorporate or weave in the safety theory. So that's a bit abstract, but what I'm saying is that, say if you have an incident reporting system, the way that the fields are set up, the types of questions it asks, the information it's pulling from the end user, ideally that should be based on some sort of model of accident causation to be effective. So if those questions are focused in on, the behavioral aspects, who broke the rule, what compliance aspect was missing, that's a really sort of punitive model of accident causation, and that shapes the culture of the organization. If the questions instead were based on more of a human factors systems view, you're getting a whole host of other bits of data from the individual that would inform corrective actions much more richly than a behavioral aspect might kind of convey. So yeah, it's often something that I don't think we talk about much, but the safety professionals can bring that theory of safety and how it kind of plays out and what sorts of things we need to look for, and the tech providers can bring the toolkit and the infrastructure to make it real.
So I'm gonna go off script here for a second, and I'm gonna see if we can go with this theme. But a lot of the audience members for Safeopedia, as an example, are a small, medium-sized organization. So they're a single safety person department, or maybe there's a 2 or 3, but they don't have a large department, and they're probably a little less formal organizations. So I've been out of the technology implementation game for a long time, but we used to try to make it a little bit fun and gamify things a little bit, and award kind of recognition more than any quantifiable rewards. But example would be, if we're rolling out a new project control system, the project manager or the foreman that's adopting it the quickest, or had their information updated for the week, got to take the scissors to the CEO's tie. I'm not sure if people wear ties anymore, but you could chop the tie off. So by the time everybody had adopted the technology and was using it out in the field, the CEO's tie would be just a nub of what it used to be. Or the Lego model in the kitchen, right? Every time somebody completed a phase, you got to put in a new piece of Lego on the model, so people could see the sometimes invisible project coming together. So do you have any inspiration or insights for maybe those smaller organizations, a little less formal, but how to have fun, with what can be a very challenging process of bringing new technology?
Yeah, I love your ideas there. I've worked with organizations in the past, and whether it's technology related or not, having some sort of fun way to recognize people generally garners more support and participation. In some cases, when we've done a team-based approach to certain new projects or implementations, we create a team leaderboard, and those change every other day. And so different teams start moving around, and people love seeing that. There's competition built within all of us. And so seeing your name or your team name up on the board in 10th place is kind of a motivator to get you up into the top 5. I've done a dunk tank before. So being able to dunk the plant manager as a reward during a safety month initiative. I think having some sort of way to recognize people, especially for a small and medium company, it doesn't have to be something that's astronomical or expensive. You don't have to give away gift cards or TVs. In fact, most of that's frowned upon now anyway. But, lots of people thrive on pure recognition. Just, hey, you're doing great. Or look at this team. They've done so well this week. That's usually a lot just to intrinsically motivate people, that verbal and written recognition.
Yeah, I guess all I'd add there, Heather's great examples is, reinforce that the theory suggests that the social aspects of technology adoption are really important. So what we mean there is the norms or the unwritten rules from co-workers. Is this a good idea to use? Is it something we accept as a team? That kind of intangible stuff that we might miss in our enthusiasm to just roll something out. The more we can build that sense of, as a team, we see the value of this, we see the usefulness of it, we see the relevance to our job. That social pressure will drive your implementation really hard.
Yeah, and I think. Oh, sorry, Gabe.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, because Tristan, you made a really good point, and we stress it all the time, is that don't feel like you're on your own to try to convince your organization that this is a good idea. Vendors do this every day, and they are well equipped to come in and help you position it to be successful, but also position it to get the buy-in, within your organization. So don't feel like you're out there on your own. Definitely reach out to the vendors. I've seen people getting invited to user group forums where they haven't actually purchased the software yet, or they haven't purchased the new technology, but they go to where there's a group of people who already adopted it, and they're talking about it and they're sharing their experiences. And that's that the social acceptance of it, seeing, oh, other people have done it, other people are using it, we're not just out on our own trying to figure this out by ourselves. So
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny. Your comments actually kind of teed up the thought that I had as well. So we were talking about, or we have been talking about, implementation and getting the technology adoption started. But what happens once it's launched? Let's say that it's now up and running, and we all know that there is no really set it and forget it situation when it comes to new tech. And the tendency I've found is that people will tend to revert back to what they knew before, unless they see a benefit of the new tech going forward. So I'll start with you, Heather. What are some tips and tricks maybe that leadership could have once the technology is implemented, to make sure that it continues being used and the true benefit of it is realized over the long term?
I've always been told in my career, if you measure it, it gets done. And
Right.
so I think with anything, there has to be some sort of metric around it, some way to measure your overall success with the technology. And maybe that takes a year to realize the overall success, but what are your incremental goals that you're trying to achieve? So our goal for the technology use, maybe it's, we're going to implement this technology, and at the end of 1 year, we're going to reduce injuries by 50%. That's awesome to say. How do you get there? You need to set those small milestones that you need to achieve along the way. And so sustaining it means you have to have your KPI set. You need to know, what is your end goal? And then what are your objectives? Like, how are you going to achieve that goal? So setting those. And then I love to make things visual. So have some sort of, whether it's a leadership board or it's something out on the plant floor, but mark where you're at in the stage. Where are we in our journey? And how are we measuring up to what we said we wanted to do? And that, I've used things as simple as like a circle that's a quarter of the way filled or half it for like PDCA cycles. That's a great visual, and it's easy to understand. I can very clearly see I've only achieved 50% if that circle's half full. So having a way to set the metrics and then actually measure it, and then hold yourself accountable. And that usually means making it public information. I'm going to be more likely to make sure that I'm checking all those boxes if I know that, hey, Heather's progress is going to be reported out and everybody's going to see this. I'm going to make sure I'm doing what I said I was going to do.
Right. Even if it's not necessarily executive management that's watching, even just your peers seeing it.
I actually think it's even more important that the peers and the employees that I think that as safety people, we work for the employees. I think it's more important that they see it rather than executive leadership. Executive leadership, again, they probably just want like, I just want a couple bullet points to know, but the hourly workforce that we are here to serve and protect, they're going to be more impacted by our actual progress than anybody else. So letting them really keep tabs on you is, it's a nice way to be transparent.
So it's 360 accountability on that one.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice. Tristan, what are your thoughts on that? On keeping things rolling?
I'd really support what Heather said about measurement. That's a passion topic of mine. So measures like, not only are they using it, but how often, how comprehensive is the use, what tasks are they using it for, what not, and the mixture of qualitative and quantitative. So the comments and the numbers helps. The contribution I'd add is we know from the successful adoption of education and training programs in safety that the frontline supervisor is really crucial. So the more that a supervisor can take an interest, ask people, how are you going with this? What are you using it for? Where are you getting stuck? Providing time for training, that they're really a facilitator and an enabler of the thing being implemented at the ground level. So if your supervisors aren't on board, then I would say that it would definitely fail. You're just looking for, those little innovative people that are drawn to technology, and the rest of the group, the rest of the bell curve would lag behind, and the whole initiative would probably fail. So that would be my contribution. Get your supervisors on board and help assist them to drive it at the front line.
And I think if you look around and talk to folks, read reports, it says safety's behind the curve when it comes to technology adoption. If you look at other departments within an organization, accounting's been running payroll on mainframes since the 60s, and engineering and et cetera. But maybe we could talk about how it's actually an opportunity, how the organization doesn't have that technical debt on the safety department side, and how safety's in a position to sort of leapfrog ahead of the rest of the organization, almost to adopt that leading edge technology and skip over some of the legacy technology that might be challenge to other departments. And Tristan, I think you sort of touched on that in your opening remarks about where safety tech is at right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. I think there's a couple of different generations or waves of safety tech. There's the first wave was really, like I said initially, that you're just digitizing paper forms, like the checklists, the auditing tools, or let's just make it a digital version of that. But now we're starting to see the second generation of stuff, which is really cool, which integrates AI. And I know I had this idea a while back, like, wouldn't it be great if safety could have this kind of little box that sits in a pre-start meeting or a toolbox talk, and it kind of analyzes what's being said and sort of gives you coaching feedback as a supervisor. How was your tone during the meeting? Did you kind of, enable enough people to talk? Was there a balanced sort of contribution from everyone in the meeting? So I see safety tech, in the AI kind of world coming together really quickly. We just have to be careful of what I call kind of this information paradox, that in safety we measure so much stuff that the more we measure, the less we know. So we kind of have this sort of overload of data points. But without the ability to rapidly translate that into insights, safety is just going to be bogged down in this messy kind of assortment of data that just doesn't result in any change or insights to the organization. In safety, we count things, we look at things. We're really data oriented. But I think the next step for safety is to really get the insights, and that will require AI to analyze, qualitative comments on take 5 forms. It'll analyzing incident investigation data more succinctly and quickly. So I think there's huge opportunity. We just have to really upskill and get more comfortable dealing with these advanced technologies.
Yeah, great. Heather, did you want to?
No, I would I would absolutely agree with what Tristan said. And I think part of the reason why just in the safety world, we're kind of behind the curve in terms of, the use and adoption of technology. You mentioned payroll. I think some of those more business critical aspects have been automated or started using some sort of technology platform decades ago because it was such a compelling case from a business perspective to do so. If I think about implementing a safety platform, whether it's incident management system, it's not as compelling of a story. So you really have to have, a solid reason and rationale for why this is going to be beneficial to the organization. And I agree with Tristan. We all need to upskill. We all need to learn more about what's available and how it can actually help scale our work. A safety person has 800 things to do in a day, and the use of technology may or may not come into play. So being able to understand how I can scale this across the entire organization, and get others to use it, like your frontline supervisor, that starts to make a pretty compelling case.
I
Yeah.
like that idea also of understanding what's out there and finding the right tool for the needs of your organization. I mean, if the organization is actually built up of people, which pretty much all of them are, then all people are going to be different, and the organization will have its own culture, its own rhythm, those kind of things. And just because the tech is shiny and new doesn't mean that particular tech is exactly what's needed for your organization. So it feels like safety professionals are in this very unique spot where they have interaction with both executive management and line workers and everybody in between. So you can actually get the rhythm of your organization and find the tool that will work best, and then guide it through that adoption process and implementation, and then the maintenance of it going forward. But I totally agree, Heather. That concept of learning what's out there, understanding the technology, being able and willing to use it and learn it, I think there will be a lot of advantages for not just the safety professional, but the organization as a whole and the workers and how they're doing their work. That will be extremely, I mean, it'll be a multiplicative effect. It's not just additive. I mean, you'll see hopefully exponential changes that happen. But you have to be willing to actually learn about the tech that's out there and then go through the implementation process.
Yeah, well, I think we're we're at time here, and I think we had some great pointers for folks. Again, we'll have Heather and Tristan's contact information below the video and on our site, so people can. We encourage you to reach out on LinkedIn and connect and ask questions. Are there any kind of parting words of wisdom you want to leave our 6 or 7 listeners that we've accumulated since we started doing our podcast?
Scott, you can't count the 2 of us as listeners.
Oh,
so
sorry.
It's really 3 or 4.
3 or 4, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
If I can be trite, I would say good luck. But no, truly, I think there's so much information out there, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed. So people should reach out. You don't have to find the solution on your own. You don't have to start from scratch. There's so many of us out there that have already gone through the process. It's as simple as, connecting via email or phone, LinkedIn, finding somebody who's been there, done that to help solve the issues with you.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And to add to it, there's a whole bunch of academic science on this topic of technology adoption, and it's a rich area, and it is just waiting to be applied to safety. So yeah, I think there's plenty to help everyone out there. Just get in touch with someone that's in the know, and they'll be able to set you on the right path.
And make your organization safer, enhance your resume and your future career opportunities all at the same time.
There's no downside there. No downside.
That's right.
Well, great. Thanks, Heather and Tristan. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I know we could probably have 6 or 7 more follow-ups and dive even deeper into these different topics. So we'll definitely keep you on the rotation and invite you back in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you for
Sounds
having me.
great.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Cool,
Absolutely.
guys. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you for listening to today's podcast. Really appreciate your time and attention. And just want to give a special shout out to Isometrics, our sponsor of today's podcast. If you're looking for ESG software or EH&S software, please visit isometrics.com. Thank you.